Long before children hung stockings by the fire, and long before Santa's sleigh ever touched the sky, there was a quiet village hidden deep within the Arctic snow, a place untouched by time, a place where the world moved slowly, and where reindeer were raised not just to run, but to dream. The snow there was gentle, the nights were long, and the stars shone brighter than anywhere else on Earth. On one such night, as the moon climbed high and the wind whispered softly through the pines, a young doe labored quietly in a sheltered clearing. No celebration, no crowd, just snow and silence. And then life arrived. A newborn calf lay beside her, smaller than the rest, fragile, still. He breathed softly, as though the world itself was too loud for him. He was gentle, quiet, different. Snowflakes settled on his fur, unmoving, as if even the snow was afraid to disturb him. But then something happened. As clouds drifted apart, moonlight poured down and rested on the calf's face. And there, where his nose should have been ordinary, there was warmth. Not a bright glow, not a shining light, just a soft red shimmer, like an ember breathing. The elders saw it. They stood in a quiet circle, their breath visible in the cold air. No one spoke at first. Then one voice, low and uncertain, broke the silence. "This one is strange." Another replied, slower, wiser. "Nature makes no mistakes, but this is unusual." The calf blinked, unaware of the whispers, unaware of the concern. He looked up at the sky, at the endless stars above him, as if he already felt connected to something greater. And in that quiet moment, with snow falling softly and the night holding its breath, the calf was given a name: Rudolph. No one knew it then, but that small, gentle calf with the warm red nose would one day change the course of Christmas forever. Because sometimes the thing that makes you different is the very thing the world has been waiting for. As Rudolph grew, so did the glow. At first, it was barely noticeable, a gentle warmth in the daylight, a soft red shimmer that only appeared when the sun slipped away. By winter's end, there was no hiding it. During the day, his nose glowed quietly, like a secret he'd tried not to share. But at night it shone, bright enough to touch the snow, bright enough to follow him wherever he went. The other young reindeer noticed. At first, they stared. Then they laughed. "Lantern nose," one shouted. "Turn him off. He's blinding us," another laughed. Their laughter echoed across the snow, sharp and careless, the kind that lingers long after it fades. Rudolph lowered his head, not because he was weak, but because he was tired of being seen before being known. So he tried to hide it. He pressed his nose deep into snowbanks until the cold burned. He wrapped scarves around his face, pulling them tight, hoping the warmth would disappear. He even covered it with mud, standing still, waiting. But nothing worked. The glow always returned. No matter how much he tried to be like everyone else, the light refused to leave him. His father watched quietly, a strong reindeer, a fast runner, respected by many. He loved his son deeply, but worry sat heavy in his eyes. He didn't scold Rudolph. He didn't shame him. He only stood beside him, silent, as if the world would be kinder than it was. The elders, however, spoke plainly. "Strength is speed," they said, "and speed is everything." Their voices carried tradition, rules passed down through generations, rules that made no room for difference. Rudolph listened, and in that moment, he learned something far heavier than the snow beneath his hooves. He learned that being different meant being alone. He stood at the edge of the group, his nose glowing softly, watching others gather in laughter and ease. No one pushed him away. They didn't have to. The space between them said enough. And yet, even in the loneliness, even in the quiet, that glow never faded. It remained steady, patient, waiting. Because sometimes, what feels like a burden when you're young is actually a purpose, still finding its time. Every year, the North Pole came alive with the reindeer games. Snowy fields stretched farther than the eye could see. Colorful banners fluttered in the icy wind. Reindeer lined up, disciplined and proud, while elves watched from the sidelines. It was a test of skill, a test of strength, a test of heart. And this year, Rudolph was ready. Or so he hoped. Santa sat on the wooden platform, his red coat votive against the white snow. His eyes were calm, thoughtful, weighing every movement of the reindeer below. Not a frown, not a cheer, just careful observation, as if measuring more than speed or strength. Rudolph ran harder than any reindeer had ever before, across snowy fields, over wooden obstacles, around sharp turns. He practiced leaps and formations, perfecting each motion until his legs trembled beneath him. And still, he pressed on. He pushed past every limit he could imagine, breath heavy in the cold air, snow kicking up behind his hooves, every step a promise to himself that he would not give up. With focus and discipline, he executed every turn, every leap, every formation flawlessly. Other reindeer watched from a distance, eyes impressed but still distant. Rudolph felt hope rising in his chest. The lineup began. Side by side, all the young reindeer took their positions. Rudolph joined them, his nose glowing faintly in the winter light. The crowd grew quiet. Anticipation hung in the air. Then it happened. The laughter returned. "Lantern nose! Turn him off! He's blinding us!" Rudolph froze. His shoulders sank slightly. The mockery cut deeper than the cold wind. Even the soft glow of his nose felt like a spotlight on his difference. Santa's brow furrowed, not with anger, but with confusion. He looked from Rudolph to the other reindeer and back again. He didn't understand why brilliance could feel like shame. Finally, Santa stepped forward, voice gentle but firm. "Perhaps next year," he said. Rudolph's heart felt like ice under heavy boots. A quiet crack ran through him. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving him alone. He stood there, nose glowing softly, snow falling heavier around him, eyes lowered, dreams paused. And yet, that soft light remained, a quiet reminder that even in disappointment, he was still remarkable. That night, Rudolph ran. He ran through the familiar forests, past trees that had once felt safe. Snow crunched under his hooves, each step echoing in the cold silence. He leapt over frozen rivers, water glittering beneath the ice. The wind whipped his fur. His nose glowed faintly, lighting the path before him, a soft ember in the dark. He ran past the edge of everything he had ever known. Open fields stretched endlessly into darkness. Snow swallowed his tracks, as if the world wanted to forget him too. Tears froze on his cheeks. He whispered to the night, "If I don't belong, I'll disappear." The trees, the snow, the quiet, everything seemed to listen. Yet fate was already moving, even if he could not see it. A blizzard suddenly rose, snow swirling around him in a chaotic dance. Visibility dropped. Every step became harder, every breath heavier. Obstacles appeared, fallen logs, hidden rocks, deep snowdrifts, but he did not stop. Each leap was precise, calculated, and fueled by determination. The red glow of his nose cut through the storm, a beacon in the endless white. He reached a vast frozen plain. The wind howled, carrying his whispers away. He paused only briefly, catching his breath, his nose glowing warmly against the icy darkness. Snow fell faster now, covering his tracks as if the world wanted him to vanish. Still, he ran on. Every heartbeat, every pounding hoofbeat carried him forward. The stars above glimmered softly, watching silently. Rudolph ran toward the horizon, toward a destiny he could not yet understand. His glowing nose illuminated the path, small, bright, and unwavering. Sometimes the darkest nights and the loneliest runs are the ones that lead us to exactly where we belong. Out there, beyond the lights of the North Pole, beyond the laughter and the rules, Rudolph found the wilderness, not empty, not silent, but waiting. The snow stretched endlessly. The night was cold but calm. Rudolph walked carefully, his glowing nose lighting the path ahead. For the first time, he wasn't running anymore. He was listening. That's when he met Lumi. A small fox stepped out from behind a snowbank, white fur dusted with frost, sharp eyes filled with fear. Lumi couldn't hunt. Every chase ended in failure. Every hunger ended in shame. But Lumi didn't laugh at Rudolph's nose. He simply looked and understood. Not far away, a shadow shifted on a snowy hill. Bryn, a young polar bear, big paws, powerful frame, curled into himself like a cub. Bryn was afraid of the dark. The vast silence terrified him. The night felt too big. Rudolph stepped closer. His nose glowed gently, not blinding, just warm. Bryn lifted his head, and for the first time that night, the dark didn't feel so heavy. Then there was Tink. A small elf sat alone on a fallen log, tools scattered around him, tiny gears, springs, unfinished toys. Tink dreamed of building toys that could feel joy, comfort, love. But the workshop laughed at him. Toys don't have hearts, they said. Rudolph's glow lit Tink's hands as he worked. And no one mocked, no one rushed him. They listened. 4 souls, 4 misfits, each broken in a different way. They sat together as snow drifted softly around them. No jokes, no judgment, no rules to follow, just understanding. For the first time in his life, Rudolph didn't feel strange. He felt seen, not for what made him different, but for who he was. His glowing nose reflected in their eyes, not as something to hide, but something that belonged. And in that quiet wilderness, Rudolph learned something powerful. Sometimes you don't find your place by fitting in. You find it by finding the ones who understand why you never could. Back at the North Pole, disaster struck. Not slowly, not gently, but all at once. The sky darkened as a storm unlike any before rolled in. Clouds towered and twisted, swallowing the stars. Then the moon. Then the sky itself. Snow fell harder than anyone had ever seen. It didn't just fall, it erased. The horizon vanished. The air turned white. Up and down disappeared. The North Pole became a world without edges. Winds screamed through the ice fields. They tore through banners. They bent steel. They swallowed sound itself. Elves shouted warnings, but no one could hear. Even the bells fell silent. At the launch platform, Santa's sleigh stood ready, and yet completely powerless. Ice crawled along the runners. Harnesses rattled in the wind. The reindeer strained forward, but the air was too heavy, too angry. The sleigh would not rise. Santa stood beside it, his snow clinging to his beard, his red coat snapping violently in the storm. He didn't shout, he didn't panic, but in his eyes, something shifted. Christmas was only hours away. Homes were waiting, children were sleeping. Hope was hanging by a thread of belief. And for the first time in centuries, Santa didn't know if he could fly. The workshop lights flickered in the distance. Warmth struggled against the cold. Time slipped forward, uncaring. The storm pressed closer, relentless, unyielding. Somewhere in the silence, the truth settled in. Strength alone would not save Christmas. Speed would not be enough. Tradition had reached its limit, and hope was fading fast. But storms don't just bring destruction. Sometimes they force us to remember what we once overlooked. Far away from the North Pole, far beyond the storm, Rudolph felt it. Not as sound, not as sight, but as a pull deep within his chest. His nose burned brighter than it had ever before. Not warm, not gentle, it blazed. The red glow cut through the falling snow, lighting the night like a warning or a calling. The storm tugged at him. The wind leaned closer. The darkness seemed to reach out and whisper his name. This was no accident. Behind him, his friends stood quietly. Lumi, Bryn, Tink. They didn't hold him back. They didn't beg him to stay. They already knew. Go, they said softly, not with fear, but with pride. This is why you're different. Rudolph turned toward the storm. His legs shook. His breath caught. Every memory of laughter, of rejection, of standing alone rose like ice in his chest. Fear wrapped himself around him. What if he failed? What if he wasn't enough? What if the storm swallowed him whole? The wind roared louder, but beneath the fear, something else spoke. Quieter, steadier, courage. It didn't promise safety. It didn't promise success. It only whispered one thing: run. Rudolph lowered his head. His hooves dug into the snow. The glow from his nose surged, bright, fierce, undeniable. And then he ran. Not away this time, not to disappear, but toward the storm. Snow exploded beneath his stride. The red light streaked forward, cutting a path through the darkness. Each step stronger than the last. The wilderness watched. The stars held their breath. The storm felt him coming, because sometimes the thing that makes you different is the very thing the world has been waiting for. The storm raged without mercy. Snow blinded the North Pole. Winds howled through the ice fields. Hope clung to the night like a fragile flame. Then something cut through the darkness. A red light, sharp, brilliant. Rudolph burst through the storm. Reindeer gasped, hooves frozen mid-step. Elves cried out, shielding their eyes. The snow itself seemed to hesitate as the glow washed over everything. No one laughed now. Santa stared, not in anger, not in doubt, but in recognition. For years, Santa had watched Rudolph struggle, watched him train harder than the rest, watched him carry something he did not yet understand. And now, in the heart of the storm, the truth stood before him. "Your light," Santa said softly. It was never a flaw. Those words landed heavier than any snow. Rudolph felt them settle deep within him, warming places the cold had reached long ago. For the first time, he didn't lower his head in shame, he lifted it. The North Pole came alive. Elves moved with purpose, harnesses snapped into place, bells rang again, sharp and clear through the storm. Fear gave way to motion. Reindeer lined up beside the sleigh, strong, ready, and at the very front, Rudolph stepped forward. His nose burned brighter than ever before, not wild, not uncontrolled, focused, guiding. Santa climbed aboard the sleigh, his eyes never leaving the glowing path ahead. The storm still roared, the night was still dangerous, but now they had a light. Sometimes the thing you hide, the thing they tell you to fix, the thing that makes you stand apart, is the very thing the world will one day follow. Rudolph stood tall at the lead, not as an outcast, not as a mistake, but as the one who would guide them all. The sky fought them, wind screamed, snow blinded, but Rudolph's nose cut through the darkness like a star reborn. Children slept, dreams waited, the sleigh flew on. Everywhere they went, hope followed, not loudly, not in triumph, but quietly, like light finding cracks in the dark. The storm still raged behind them, howling in anger, thrashing at the sky. But ahead, the snow began to soften. Winds that once screamed now whispered. The clouds shifted, not fleeing, but parting. As Rudolph led the way, his red glow cut through the night like a promise the world had almost forgotten. Below them, villages waited, windows dim, fireplaces cold, children asleep without dreams, because dreams had been delayed too many times. But as the sleigh passed overhead, something changed. Snowflakes slowed their fall, shadows loosened their grip, doors creaked open just a little wider. Hope arrived first, not wrapped in paper, not tied with ribbons, but carried on light. Santa watched from behind, his hands steady on the reins, his eyes wide, not in doubt now, but in awe. This was no longer a rescue, it was a journey. Through frozen forests where wolves once prowled, now stilled by warmth, across oceans locked in ice, now glimmering with reflected glow, over cities where storms had erased the stars, until Rudolph's light returned them, one by one. Everywhere they went, hope followed. The sleigh didn't rush. It didn't need to. Time itself seemed to slow, as if the night understood this moment mattered. Houses appeared, chimneys opened, stockings waited, one gift at a time. One home at a time. Fear loosened its hold. Loneliness stepped back, and wonder returned. Softly, carefully, as if afraid to break the silence. By dawn, the sky began to pale. Blue melted into gold. Stars faded, satisfied. The final house stood quiet at the edge of the world. A single light burned in a window. Rudolph guided the sleigh down gently. The last gift was delivered, and with it, something more. Relief. Belief. The knowing that even the longest night can be crossed by one steady light. Santa placed a hand on Rudolph's neck. No words, none were needed. As the sun rose, the storm dissolved, not defeated, but finished. Snow rested peacefully now. The world exhaled. Christmas lived, not because every gift arrived, but because hope did. And wherever that light had traveled, the world remembered how to believe again. Back home, the storm did not return. Morning arrived quietly at the North Pole, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The snow lay untouched, smooth, endless, forgiving. No wind, no thunder, no fear, just light. A soft golden sunrise spilled across the village, warming the ice, melting the last shadows of the night Rudolph had conquered. The bells were silent. The training grounds were empty. No laughter echoed now. Instead, the elders stood in a line. They were the same ones who had whispered, the same voices that had judged, the same eyes that had turned away. But now, they bowed, slowly, humbly, without a word. No applause, no ceremony. Just understanding. The laughter was gone, not forced away, not silenced by shame. It vanished because it no longer had power. Rudolph stood before them, not taller, not louder, not brighter, just steadier. His hooves rested firmly in the snow. His breath was calm. His shoulders no longer carried the weight of explanation, and his nose, it glowed, not blazing, not burning, a gentle red light, steady, peaceful, alive. Not the glow of victory, not the glow of pride, but the glow of someone who no longer needed permission to exist. For the first time, Rudolph did not shrink himself. He did not hide behind scarves or snowbanks. He did not lower his head when eyes met his. He simply stood, free. Free from the need to prove, free from the fear of being seen, free from the lie that different meant broken. The elders raised their heads. Their eyes were softer now, not because Rudolph had saved Christmas, but because he had shown them something far rarer, that what they feared was what they needed all along. Rudolph did not speak. He didn't have to. His light said everything. It said, "I am not your mistake. I am not your embarrassment. I am not your exception. I am your reminder that sometimes the path forward is lit by those who were told they didn't belong." Rudolph didn't glow brighter because he was proud. He glowed because he was finally free. And in that quiet morning, under the warming Arctic sun, the North Pole changed forever. Not because of magic, but because it learned to see. And so, every year since, when the world feels dark, when storms feel endless, when you feel different, remember Rudolph. Because sometimes, the very thing that sets you apart is what the world needs most. The end.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever show it, you would even say it's glow.